Melania Trump's fiery reaction after host attacks her husband on live TV. What happened next will leave you speechless. In a world full of critics, it takes a truly strong person to stand unwavering in defense of what they believe. Melania Trump, the wife of one of the most controversial men in American history, had always known what it meant to stand by her convictions. She had faced intense scrutiny, harsh media attacks, and endless debates, yet she always remained composed, her resolve unbroken. But tonight, things were about to change. The stage was set for a confrontation that no one could have predicted. As Melania stepped onto the set of a popular late-night talk show, the energy in the studio shifted. She wasn't just any guest. She was the First Lady of the United States, a woman who had faced constant public scrutiny, yet held a unique position of influence. This interview, her first since leaving the White House, was supposed to be a casual affair. Melania was there to talk about her initiatives, her charity work, and the next chapter of her life. But no one expected the host's questions to go off script so quickly. The host, known for his biting remarks and sharp critiques, was about to take the conversation to a place Melania was not prepared for. As he turned toward her, his eyes gleamed with the anticipation of asking the tough questions. "Melania, welcome to the show," the host said, his voice smooth but filled with an underlying edge. "You've been in the spotlight for so long, especially as the First Lady of the United States. But tell me, how do you feel now that your husband, Donald Trump, is out of office? Many people felt his presidency was divisive. How do you reconcile that with your own values and your role during his term?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Melania had faced questions like these countless times before, but there was something different in the tone tonight. The host wasn't just interested in her personal perspective. He was pushing for a reaction. Her response was calm, calculated, but there was a flicker of intensity in her eyes. "I've always believed in supporting my husband, because I know him better than anyone else. The decisions he made were not always popular, but they were driven by what he thought was best for America," Melania said, her voice steady but firm. "My role as First Lady was to stand by him, support him, and focus on the things that matter: helping children, advocating for people who needed a voice, and bringing attention to causes that mattered." The host leaned in, sensing a chance to dig deeper. "But don't you think that his actions, his words, left the country more divided than ever? The rhetoric, the media clashes, the controversy surrounding his administration, it was a lot to handle. How can you, as his wife, defend that?" Melania paused for a moment, her gaze never leaving the host's. The room was tense, the audience holding its breath. This wasn't just about politics. It was about something much deeper. Melania wasn't just defending her husband's actions. She was standing up for him in the face of a direct attack. "I understand that people saw things differently, and that's natural in a democracy," she said slowly. "But my husband's actions were never about division. They were about standing up for America's interests. He fought for the American people, even when it wasn't easy. And as his wife, I was there to support him through it all." The host wasn't backing down. He knew exactly how to press her buttons. "I get that, Melania, but surely you've seen the way the country reacted to him. People were angry, protests, riots, constant criticism. Don't you think his leadership style was harmful?" The words hit hard, but Melania didn't flinch. Her composure was unshakable, but now there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "What people forget is that my husband was always honest with the American people," she said, her voice rising slightly. "He didn't sugarcoat things. He didn't play the political game. People didn't always agree with him, but that's part of leadership. Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard." The host's smile faltered. He had expected her to be rattled, to stumble in the face of his barrage of questions. But Melania wasn't backing down. She was taking every hit in stride, and it was clear that she was prepared for whatever came next. The tension in the room was palpable. The audience was silent, caught between admiration for Melania's strength and the discomfort of watching the confrontation unfold. The host, sensing that he wasn't getting the reaction he wanted, tried one last time. "You know, Melania, sometimes I think people just don't understand what it's like to be in your shoes. To defend someone who has caused so much controversy, so much division. It must be difficult," the host said, attempting to soften the mood. But Melania's response was swift and cutting. "It's not difficult to defend someone who is fighting for what he believes in, no matter the cost. I will always stand by my husband because I know the man he is. And I know what he's done for this country," she said, her voice firm and resolute. The room fell into an eerie silence. The host opened his mouth to say something more, but no words came. Melania had not only silenced his attack, but had done so with a poise and strength that left the entire studio in awe. The host, clearly taken aback by Melania's unshaken response, paused for a brief moment. He had expected her to be cornered, vulnerable, perhaps even defensive. But instead, she had turned the tables, leaving him with nothing to grasp. The audience could feel the shift in the room. Melania wasn't just defending her husband. She was asserting her own strength, her own voice. After a long, uncomfortable silence, the host attempted to regain control. "Well, Melania, let's switch gears a bit. The public has always seen you as a somewhat reserved figure, mostly keeping to the background during your time as First Lady. But now, you're out here speaking up more, sharing your opinions. Why now? What's changed?" Melania's gaze never wavered. She was calm, yet there was an unmistakable fire burning behind her eyes. "What's changed is simple. I've always believed that actions speak louder than words. For years, I've worked on causes that matter: children's well-being, combating the opioid crisis, helping the underprivileged. But now, it's time to share the truth about what my husband did for this country. He doesn't get the credit he deserves." The host's attempt at steering the conversation had failed again. The crowd's energy shifted as Melania's conviction filled the room. He could feel the pressure building, but he couldn't back out now. He had to dig deeper. "But Melania, we can't ignore the fact that your husband's presidency was marked by controversy. From the way he handled immigration to the way he interacted with the media, it was divisive. It wasn't just about his policies. It was his approach that left people feeling hurt. What do you say to those who think that your husband's actions were simply too much?" The host's voice was almost condescending now, pushing Melania to respond in a way that could justify the negativity. But she wasn't buying into his narrative. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp with intensity, and her voice rang out with calm authority. People forget that my husband was the first president in a long time who truly listened to the forgotten people of America. The ones who felt left behind, neglected by the government. They were ignored for years, but Donald Trump heard them, Melania said, her voice strong, unwavering. And as for the media, they took every opportunity to tear him down, to paint him as a villain. But he never stopped fighting. He never backed down from what he believed was right. That's why so many people loved him, and that's why he's still admired today. There was no hesitation in her words, no doubt in her voice. She spoke with a confidence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. The host, though clearly uncomfortable, wasn't ready to admit defeat. "Yes, we get it. He was a man of conviction," the host replied, clearly annoyed. But the divisiveness, the chaos, it was something the country couldn't ignore. "Do you honestly think his approach was the right one?" Melania's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, a subtle, almost imperceptible smile crept onto her lips. It wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of quiet power, of someone who knew exactly where this conversation was headed and wasn't afraid to finish it. Divisiveness. "Let me tell you something," she said, leaning in just a little more. "Sometimes, real change doesn't come without discomfort. Yes, people were divided, but that's because they were forced to confront the truth. My husband didn't just go along with the status quo. He challenged it. He challenged the media, the politicians, and the system itself. And you know what? That's what made him a great leader." The host froze, unsure how to respond to this level of conviction. His bravado seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet realization that Melania wasn't just talking about her husband. She was speaking about herself, too. She was not just defending him. She was defending the idea of standing up for something, no matter how difficult it might be. "I know the media doesn't like to portray him this way," Melania continued, her voice steady, "but my husband was and still is someone who fights for America's future. He doesn't care about being popular. He cares about being effective. And for that, he deserves respect, not scorn." The audience was now fully engaged, some nodding in agreement, others unsure of how to react to the stark power in her words. The host, unable to counter her arguments effectively, attempted to steer the conversation one more time. "All right, but tell me this, Melania, why the silence? Why not speak up sooner? If you felt this strongly about your husband's presidency, why keep quiet until now?" The host's question, though sharp, seemed to be his last attempt at regaining some control. Melania's eyes glistened as she took a deep breath, ready to deliver the final blow. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her calm was more powerful than any shout could ever be. "I've never been one to speak just for the sake of speaking," she said softly, her gaze never leaving the host's. "But when the truth is being twisted, when lies are spread to serve a narrative, that's when it's time to step forward. And now, the truth is out there for anyone who cares to listen." The host had no response. The words were out. The entire room fell into a deep, stunned silence. Caroline's powerful words had not only silenced the host, but had shifted the entire tone of the conversation. She had come here to defend her husband, yes, but in doing so, she had also shown the world who she truly was, a woman of strength, of dignity, and above all, of integrity. The studio remained in stunned silence, and for a brief moment, It seemed as though time itself had frozen. The host, whose usual sharp tongue and quick comebacks had become his trademark, now stood there, speechless. His confidence, once so unwavering, had been shattered by Melania's calm yet powerful defense. The crowd, once uncertain, now seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the next words, the next move. Melania, however, was unbothered by the tension she had created. She sat there, poised and calm, but beneath her composed exterior was a force that had been awakened. The host, looking for any way to regain control, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His questions had failed. His attempts to rattle her had fallen flat. And now he was stuck. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the host cleared his throat and, trying to recover, forced a smile. "Well, Melania," he said, his voice faltering slightly, "it's clear that you're very passionate about defending your husband, and I respect that. But the question remains, what's next for you? What's your vision for the future?" The shift in his tone was almost palpable. It was no longer about attacking or provoking. He was backpedaling, trying to salvage something from this conversation. But Melania, ever poised, didn't let the change in his approach go unnoticed. She gave him a polite, yet firm, smile. "My focus has always been on the future," she replied, her voice clear and confident. "Since leaving the White House, I've continued to work on initiatives that help children, families, and those in need. I believe in using my platform to make a difference. And while I've been quiet at times, that doesn't mean I haven't been working behind the scenes." There was a shift in her demeanor now, a calm assurance that permeated the room. The audience could see that this was not just a response to the host, it was a statement. Melania was no longer in the background. She was stepping forward, using her experience and her influence for the greater good. The host nodded, though he still seemed uncomfortable. "And do you feel that your role has changed since your time as First Lady? How do you see yourself in this new chapter of your life?" Melania paused for a moment, and then leaned forward, her eyes locking onto the host's with a new intensity. "Yes, my role has changed," she said, her voice steady. "But my mission has always been the same, to make a positive impact. To be a voice for those who don't have one. And I'm not just here to be seen, I'm here to be heard." The host, realizing that he couldn't rattle her any further, finally sighed and gave a small nod. "Well, Melania, it's clear that you're not just the quiet First Lady anymore. You've certainly made your voice heard tonight." Melania's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "That was the point," she said softly. "Sometimes, silence doesn't mean weakness. It means waiting for the right moment to speak." With those words, she stood up, the audience erupting into applause. She had said what needed to be said, and the host, though clearly caught off guard, had nothing more to add. As Melania made her way off the set, her poise never wavered. She had proven that her strength lay not in her ability to shout, but in her calm assurance and unwavering support for what she believed in. She had defended her husband, yes, but in doing so, she had shown the world that she, too, was a force to be reckoned with. The host watched her leave, his earlier confidence now replaced with a mix of awe and respect. He had come to this interview thinking he could provoke a reaction, but what he hadn't expected was to be schooled in the art of quiet strength. Melania Trump had left an indelible mark on the night, and on him. As the studio doors closed behind her, the talk show went quiet. The cameras, still rolling, captured the stunned faces of the audience. They knew that what they had just witnessed wasn't just another celebrity interview. It was a defining moment, a moment when a woman stood tall in the face of an attack, and not only defended her own, but also reminded everyone of the power of resilience, the strength of conviction, and the quiet force that came from within.